Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? Well, I was concerned about this. I even spoke about it on my videos. Me and Nader kind of went back and forth a little bit about the possibility of this. I'm talking about a civil war. We are closer now than ever before to a civil war over there in Iraq. Before I get started, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, go to our friends over at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. And if you're paying attention to what's going on right now, there are central banks all over the world stocking up. Do what they do, not as they say. So a civil war possibility in Iraq, it certainly looks that way, and it kind of looks that way to me, but it also looks this way to a lot of other people. Looky here, it says Iraq is nearing the brink of a Shiite civil war. The increasingly violent rivalry between Saudi and Iran will decide Iraq's future. So again, my thing is this. Iran should be out of Iraq's business. You don't see Iraq over there telling Iran how to run their country and what it is they should do. The thing is, this is when religion gets involved. And when you have revered religious leaders that are all coming from Iran, that people from Iraq listen to, it makes it really tough to run your own country. It said in a period of 24 hours, Saudi was able to demonstrate the extent of his power as the streets of Baghdad submitted to and then subsided from widespread violence, both at his behest. On August 29, Saudi's followers made the capital into a war zone until he called for an end to armed conflict the next morning. Within an hour, the chaos in the city had stopped, claiming with it at least 21 lives and injuring 250 others. When you have this kind of power, this much influence, and this much control over people, it could be both bad and good depending on the individual that holds the power. The events leading up to the turmoil revealed the geopolitical battle at play between Iran and Iraq's efforts to form a government in Baghdad. See, my thing is this. I side with Saudi on this. I don't think other countries should be involved in telling other countries what they should do. And that includes our own over here in the United States. I know they are notorious for this, but that doesn't mean agreeing with it. The people of each of their own country should be responsible for the people they put into office and anything that comes of it. Unlike the grassroots protests of 2019, born out of frustration from political corruption, this violence was triggered directly by Iranian influence in the country. Well, so was it 2019, to be honest with you. The catastrophic spiral of events that peaked at parts of Baghdad turning into a war zone was triggered by a largely overlooked statement by a religious leader. On August 28th, the Iraqi Shiite spiritual leader Ayatollah al-Hadi shockingly announced his retirement from his position of the religious authority with immediate effect. More surprisingly, Hadi proceeded to ask his followers to back Iran's Ayatollah Ali Khamenei instead. Although Hadi is unknown to most outside of Iraq and even to some Iraqis, he is a highly influential spiritual leader, a marja, for Saudi supporters. One central doctrine of Shiite Islam is the concept of marjia, which is the need for every Shiite Muslim to have a selected spiritual leader whose edicts and fatwas unquestionably followed. In order to become a marja, a religious cleric must go through decades of religious study, as well as earn the support of fellow senior clerics before being given the title of Ayatollah. In Iraq, it's Ayatollah al-Sistani who yields the greatest influence over spiritual decrees, and he chooses to maintain his distance from politics. In Iran, however, the Mahdi is the country's supreme leader, Khamenei, who is very much involved in ruling his own country and attempted to influence its neighbor Iraq. See, that's the problem. Saudi's father was an Ayatollah, did have the qualifications to be both a spiritual leader and a political leader. But upon the elder Saudi's assassination in 1999, his loyalists split their political and religious allegiance. As the younger Saudi is not a qualified Mahdi, his supporters duty-bound, according to Shia Islam, to follow another cleric on matters of belief, turned to Hadi, who had earned the elder Saudi's endorsement for religious guidance. Hadi's decision to resign from religious authority is unprecedented in the Marja system. The role is one usually held until death, regardless of age or well-being. Sistani, for example, is 92 and continues his duties. Ayatollah Hussein Fadallah continued on as a Marja, despite his multiple hospitalizations right up until his death until 2010. It is also not common for a living Ayatollah to appoint his successor, much less the Iraqi Ayatollah to recognize the religious authority of Iran's clerical city of Qom over the city of Najaf. For Hadi to ambiguously claim health-related issues at the age of 83, the same age as Khamenei, and to endorse Khamenei as his successor suggests Iran's political influence was at work in his decision, and with the aim towards reducing Sadr's influence. Remember, Sadr said that. He spoke out and said that Iran was behind the decision made by Hadi. But Tehran's attempt to win sway over Sadr's followers was poorly thought out. It failed to consider that his supporters were unwaveringly loyal. In one viral clip, a Sadrist said he would back Sadr even if he were to sit with the Muawiyah, the enemy of the Shiite Islam. That's hardcore right there. Seriously. What these people are saying is they would back Sadr no matter what he's done, even if it means sitting down with the enemy. Responding to Hadi's shock resignation, Sadr, and not for the first time, claimed to resign from politics, triggering his heavily armed supporters to descend onto the streets of Baghdad. For 24 hours, the city was in control of al-Salaman, Sadr's militia wing. The next morning, in a video that eerily reflected then U.S. President Donald Trump's call for his supporters to leave the capital of Washington last year, Sadr gave his supporters, I like how they're trying to compare Trump to, well, you know what? Hey, maybe justly so. Okay, I see the connection. I take that back. Sadr gave his supporters 60 minutes to withdraw from the parliament and stop all violence. His supporters immediately obeyed his demands, sending a message to Tehran that no matter how it may try to influence Iraqi politics, Sadr is still in control on the ground. This battle with Iran has been ongoing since Iraqi's October 2021 election left the country in political stalemate. Without an outright winner at the ballot box, no political party had the majority to form a government, thus propelling the country into months of ongoing political instability. The country found itself with rising poverty, increased child labor, and record unemployment rates as interim government was constitutionally barred from passing the budget, which is ridiculous. Winning the largest bloc in government, Sadr's party secured 73 of the 329 seats. Obviously, he's going to need a lot more than that this early election. They're saying that the 1/3 can block the 2/3. That means Sadr's going to need closer to about 115 seats in order to do that. So anyway, Sadr's party secured 73 of the 329 seats, colossally outweighing the Iran-backed coalition of militia groups known as the Fatwa Alliance, and dealing a huge blow to Tehran. Sadr's campaign pledges to prevent external influence in Iraq from both Iran and the United States and tackled internal corruption were primarily rhetorical, however, without the backing of any substantive policy proposals. With Iran refusing to lose influence in Iraq and Sadr refusing to back down from any anti-Iranian stance, the two polarized political wings found themselves in a deadlock that finally turned into violence last week. It marks Iraq's worst internal Shiite conflict in years. Until now, Iraq's majority Shiite demographic has largely remained united since the fall of Saddam Hussein. During the first electoral process in 2005, Sistani, who's also the spiritual leader for most Shiite Muslims globally, backed the United Iraqi Alliance promptly, a landslide victory in a heavily Shiite party grouping. Over time, however, the alliance has broken apart, coupled with a distrust of political elite by the Iraqi public. This has led to the increasingly polarized landscape amongst the Shiites, with a deep divide between Sadr's nationalistic group and the Popular Mobilization Force, which actually 1/3 of the Popular Mobilization Force is loyal to Sadr. Anyways, which are heavily influenced by Iran. It said for months, Sadr has suffered from repeated blows by Iran after he vowed to cut out Iran-backed parties from being included in forming the Iraqi government. In February this year, in a last attempt to collaborate with Sadr, Iran sent Brigadier General Kwani to meet with him. Furious by the attempt in wooing him, Sadr allegedly responded, "What does Iraqi politics have to do with you?" Iran's persistence eventually forced Sadr to renounce his victory on June the 12th, resigning nearly a third of all Iraqi lawmakers, as he instead took the battle to the streets of Iraq. Calling for a million-man march and a tweet, he vowed to continue fighting corruption, especially Shiites, and a further dig at Iran. Given a lack of viable path towards the formation of a valuable government in Iraq, Sadr has since been calling for early elections, but with Iraqis' ongoing political turbulence, another election is unlikely to fix the deep structural damage. Last October, voters' apathy and boycott led to only around 40% voter turnout, and numbers that have been waning election after election. He needs to do something to motivate him out there, and I'm sure he could do it. Then 24 hours of chaos that Baghdad was drawn into by Sadrs was a taste of what could happen if they remain without responsible leadership. It was also an indication of how quickly the country can dissolve into an all-out internal warfare given a heavily armed population. Although Tehran may not have asked directly for violence on the streets of Baghdad, it continues to attempt to influence the countries, are yielding rewards neither for Iran nor for Iraq, but contributing to the rising tensions in the country. For example, Hadi Shah's resignation shows the country is one event away from an all-out conflict. Yes, it is, and I've been saying that. With the deeply divided Shiite demographic, Iraq has once again nosedived into further turmoil. Although it may not result in an all-out civil war, it guarantees further political deadlock and popular distrust of political institutions. The only hope is for Iran to finally step back from Iraqi politics and let the nation attempt to carve its own future, as it should. The issue that Iraq is having with politics is the same thing that's happening around the world. You have these individuals who are part of this New World Order movement and backed by the World Economic Forums, being forced into position of powers, whether by legal means or illegal means. People are starting to see through this. Now, whether it's intentional or not, we are noticing uprisings all around the world. As I stated before, there's 17 countries with uprisings, and they want nothing to do with this New World Order, World Economic Forum, Great Reset. If you go to the Great Reset webpage, you can see clearly that their goal is to do away with corrupt politicians, distrust in politics, and restore it with the governance that they have already chosen. So you can see why people don't trust what's going on. It looks like a planned event for our politicians to act the way they are. Either way, you have to figure out which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones, and that's not easily done. Okay, until all this crap is settled, you're not going to see any changes whatsoever in the Iraqi dinar. We see that they've done a lot of great things for the Iraqi dinar, more gold, more foreign currency asset buildup. But if they're going to have a civil war, the country's going to be unstable, this is not good. Anyways, that's it for now. Let me know what you guys think. I look forward to your comments, and I will catch you later. I am out.